parad, where Dvidvita specifically, being very, 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 that's three varies, powerful, was proud. Now, some of you like math. You five like math, I'm sure. You don't like math? Okay, here's a math equation. The fruits of piety plus a heart that's impure equals pride. So persons that are very pious, there's fruits of piety. And if their heart is impure, they become proud of that fruit of their piety, the beauty, Janma, Aishvarya, Shruta, Shri. These are, Kunti mentions these four. Aishvarya, you do well in school. Shruta, opulence or wealth, good education, beauty, and very powerful. Aishvarya, Shruta, Shri here. So, if there's any one of those things or combination of those things that's the result of past pious activities, if the heart is, the protection is if your heart becomes pure. But if your heart's not pure, tendency is pride. So that was a problem for Dvidvita, is he was very, very strong, and he was very, very proud of his strength. He was very strong. We heard. He single-handedly fought against Ravana and one of Ravana's principal generals, and they couldn't defeat him. He was really strong. And a great fighter, besides strong. So Dvidvita, offended Lakshman 3 times. One of them was just a mental offense, but another was a verbal offense. And so he offended Lakshman. And when you make an offense to a Vaishnav, what we heard several times yesterday evening, there's a consequence. The consequence is your bhakti becomes weakened and compromised. And when your bhakti becomes weakened and compromised, one of the things that can happen, which happened to Dvidvita, is he became then susceptible to bad association. So you guys go to school, I'm sure. Yeah. And in school, just like some of the adults here, they go to work. And sometimes in school and sometimes in work, there are people that are not so wholesome. They have bad character and bad speech and bad examples. But you can be protected by bhakti. That's what you're supposed to do. And fortunate for you, you have nice devotee parents who are training you in bhakti, so you can be protected from bad association. But supposing you offend somebody, what to speak of offend Lakshmana, that's like big time, big offense. So that's a principle. And the consequence for Dvidvita is he became susceptible to bad association, specifically Narakasura, and through bad association with Narakasura, he became Krishna's enemy. It's a long story, but he became Krishna's enemy. And Krishna's enemy means also Balaram. So he messed with Balaram. Big mistake. Balaram finished him. And when he finished him, he liberated him. Now, that was the good news. But so the lesson within the story of Ramayana was the principle of aparad, Vaishnava aparad, to speak of Guru aparad, is very, very serious. The consequences are very difficult to overcome. So avoid Vaishnava aparad and Guru aparad. That was the lesson within the history. So now we're going to hear another lesson. This is a good one. It's a really good lesson. you listen carefully, you'll learn some lessons. The story is fantastic, but the lesson is also fantastic. And the lesson is overcoming obstacles. Now, many people, when they have an obstacle, unexpected obstacle, is you feel something. The challenges of life, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole seminar on where negative emotions arise from and how to deal with them. But this is Hanuman is already above dealing with them. His bhakti is so strong. He knows exactly what to do in every circumstance. And we're going to hear 4 circumstances corresponding with the modes of nature, starting with goodness, then passion, then ignorance, and how he deals with them. You ready? Okay. So here's another illustration of Hanuman. Hanuman is the greatest devotee of Ram. He introduced Ram to Sugriva service. He flew to Lanka. That's our topic for this evening. He gave Ram's message to Sita. He warned Ravana. He wholeheartedly accepted the defection of Vibhishan into Ram's camp. He brought the medicinal herb that gave life back to Lakshmana. And he prevented Bharata from immolating himself. Like any one of these we could spend some time discussing, but I won't get to this evening's topic if I start discussing, so I won't go into it. The last one is maybe you spend a little bit of time, because maybe the last one is a little less known. What does immolating mean? Put yourself on fire. Burn yourself. Immolating. So the perpetrator of the harm to Ram, of course it was a Leela, was Hunchback Mantra persuaded Kaikeyi to block Ram's coronation by cashing in on the promise that Dasrath made long, long ago, because Kaikeyi had saved his life. So Dasrath gave a promise to Kaikeyi. Anything you want, blank check, put in the amount, it's yours. 2 things, anything you want. She said, I don't need anything, later I'll ask. Mantra reminded her, you know the story, right? No, don't know the story? You know the story, kind of. Kaikeyi, persuaded by Mantra, told Dasrath, you're planning a coronation of Ram today? Guess what? What? Remember long ago you made a promise of 2 boons of anything I want? She was just reading her script given to her by Mantra, and the 2 boons, not Ram, but my son Bharata will become the next king, which is completely against Vedic culture. But that's what she wanted. And because Bharata was out of town at the time. So Bharata should become king, not Ram. Second boon. What was the second boon? Ram should go to the forest for how long? 14 years. Dasrath fainted. And so it was. Ram went to the forest for 14 years. Bharata was supposed to become the king by Dasarath's proclamation. But when Dasarath came back and heard what his mother had requested of the king, he was so angry at his mother. Rightly so. So he was determined, I'm going to convince Ram to come back and rule, because that's the right thing to do. And Ram said, no. Our father said, I should go to the forest for 14 years, and you should become the king. And he said, I'm not going to become the king. And then after a big ordeal, Ram persuaded him, for 14 years you'd be the king. And he said, give me your shoes, padukas, means shoes. Give me your padukas, and I'll put the padukas on the throne of the king, and the padukas will rule the throne, rule the kingdom, and I'll live like you in tree bark, off in the little quiet place, and I'll be the king for 14 years. But if you don't come back, after 14 years, I'm going to enter fire, as immolating himself. Hanuman came back that night before he was planning to enter into fire and said, don't do it. Ram's coming. He's got this fantastic airplane, Pushpaka Vimana, and he's going to come, so don't do anything. Ram sent Hanuman ahead because he was wondering, now that he's been ruling for 14 years, maybe he's attached. Maybe he's attached. And if he's attached, then let him rule. I'll be subservient to Bharata. No way was Bharata attached. He was attached to one thing, Ram. So that's this last little message here. He prevented Bharata from immolating himself. He did lots and lots and lots and lots of service to Ram and to the Vaishnavas. One of the things that you probably know, especially you 5 boys in the front, Hanuman is on the flag of Arjun's chariot, correct? Hanuman, the chariot of Arjun has a flag, and on the flag is Hanuman. According to, this is a nice painting of Madhvacharya. According to Madhvacharya, when Krishna spoke to Bhagavad Gita to Arjun, it was Hanuman who he was speaking for. I mean, Arjun happened to be the on the receiving end, but it was really meant for Hanuman. Madhvacharya's realization about Bhagavad Gita, one of his. Okay, so now we're ready to hear something about Hanuman's overcoming obstacles in life. The lesson within the story itself. The story itself includes, this is a nice painting of demigods approaching Vishnu, expressing they needed help because the literally universal terrorist had not only made havoc on earth, he invaded the heavenly region, and they arrested Indra, or his son. What was Ravana's son's name? You 5 boys, you know? Now, look at that, the 5 boys. I want them to be fully attentive this evening. His name's, it sounds like Indra's name. Indrajit. Now, what is, one of Krishna's names is Ajita, correct? What does Ajita mean? Unconquerable. So if Ajita means can't be conquered, then Jita means conquered. So Indrajit conquered Indra. That's how he got the name. And then they made a deal. Indra was released, but Indrajit wanted this and that and the other thing, and so he was released. He's a powerful Rakshasa and his son. They made a good team. So the painting shows the demigods are praying to Vishnu to help overcome the universal terrorist Ravana, and Vishnu agreed, but he then gave them an instruction. All these demigods were to assist him. He didn't need assistance, but he gave them some service. That's all. And what the service they were to do was to create offspring on earth in either one of two categories, either in human category or animal category. And the Vanaras, or monkeys, were the preference, the choice that many of them had. So they became parents. And the parent of Hanuman was, you five boys, starts with a V, Vayu. Now, who is Vayu? Vayu is the wind god. Vayu is the wind god. So Vayu produced a son, a Vanara king, and when Hanuman was born, he had powers like Vayu, including his ability to travel in space and just zoom around like he didn't need an airplane or anything. Didn't need a Superman outfit or anything like that. He just jumped. And he was one day, because he was hungry as a little boy, he saw what he thought was a fruit in the air, but it wasn't the fruit. It was the sun, and he was zooming towards the sun. And Indra became nervous. Who's that? So Indra sent his thunderbolt to stop his motion. That's Indra on top of his elephant, Airavata. And when the thunderbolt weapon of Hanuman hit Hanuman, it hit him in the jaw. And then he started crashing to earth. When he crashed to earth, he landed on a mountain, and that created a problem. The problem was created specifically was Vayu was really ticked off. He was really angry. And so he stopped the movement of air in the whole universe. People couldn't breathe, including the demigods. They couldn't breathe. They couldn't breathe. So they went to Lord Brahma, help. Please help. So Brahma decided, let us go and offer benedictions to Hanuman. And one by one, they offered this benediction, that benediction, the other benediction to Hanuman. And now Vayu was very pleased, so he let the air circulation go back to normal again. And the powers that were invested by the demigods, in addition to Vayu's powers, they had all these powers. Hanuman, very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. And with all that powerfulness and just being a little monkey, he started doing monkey business. And one of the monkey business things he did is he was disrupting the activities of the sages that were doing their yagyas, and he would pull their beards, and he would, he made a mess. And it wouldn't stop, and he was, look at the upper right when he's passing on their yagya. So they decided we have enough of this. They made a curse. The curse was, you will forget your great power only when you hear your powers described by another will you again remember them. So he forgot. He became a little more peaceful. Now, it doesn't say when, but it does say what. At a certain point in time, the sun god Vivaswan became Hanuman's teacher. How'd you like to have the sun god as your teacher? So he became very, very expert in Sanskrit, in proper pronunciation of the Sanskrit syllables, and everything and everything. And we know about that because it happened, it was revealed just before his leap to Lanka. He offered prayers to his father and to his guru, Vivaswan. Because when Hanuman met Ramachandra for the first time, Hanuman immediately understood who it is. And so he spoke in perfect Sanskrit with certain words and certain meter and perfect. Ram looked at Lakshmana had said, this person is not ordinary. You heard the melody and his whole demeanor, everything is he's very calm and very peaceful, and he's an excellent personality. Immediately, the first meeting one another. I mean, they're eternal associates, but that's what he said to Lakshman. And then many, many, many things happened. And one of the many things that happened was there was a plan to find Sita. Because in this sequence, Sita had been kidnapped by Ravana. And Ram was searching for Sita. And the Vanaras went in 4 directions to find Sita. Hanuman was given the southerly direction to go in along with so many other Vanaras, including Angada. Who is Angada? Angada was the son of Bali. Very good. So he was the leader of that group that went in the southerly direction, and when they were unable to find Sita all their whole time, they were given a certain number of days to get back. Angada said, you know what, if we go back, Sugriva is going to thrash us so badly. I'd rather die here by the shore of the ocean. So he laid down just to fast till death. And the other Vanaras followed him, except for one, Hanuman. And here's the vulture, Sampati. Now, Sampati, many things happened. One of the things that happened was Sampati's wings burned. His wings burned because he and his younger brother Jatayu were flying very, 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 very high and got so close to the sun. Sampati spread his wings so that his younger brother wouldn't be burned by the rays of the sun. His wings were burned, and he went crashing down to earth with no wings because his wings burned. And he landed on the Vindhya hills, which is not far from where the Vanaras were planning to give up their life. And, because he couldn't fly, he was really hungry. He couldn't go find food. And he thought, fantastic, look at lunch. So he kind of hobbled down the mountainside. And as he hobbled down to, get ready for lunch, that, the dead bodies of the Vanaras that were fasting, he heard them talking. And in the course of their talking, they mentioned Jatayu's name because Jatayu had given his life to try to save Sita. So he was now even more curious than hungry because he had great love for his brother. And so there was some discussion with the Vanaras, who are you and what's your purpose? And Sampati, one of the things about vultures, although he couldn't fly, vultures are known to have really good eyesight. In a far distance place, they can see something. So they asked Sampati, can you take a look in this southerly direction? Can you see out in the distance? Is Sita over there? And Sampati confirmed, yes, Sita's over there. And there's a detail, and it's a nice detail. When he landed in the Vindhya hills, there was a sage whose name is Chandrama Rishi. And he asked Chandrama Rishi, I want to give up my life jumping off the mountain here. Please give your benediction that I can successfully give up my life because separated from my brother and I can't do anything. So Chandrama said, I could easily restore your wings, but I won't because there's some very important service for you. What's that? The very important service was that very soon some Vanaras will come and they'll need your help to find Sita, because Sita has been kidnapped. And so as soon as you give them the instruction how to find Sita, your wings will come back. So that's what happened. So there he is looking in the direction where the Vanaras are saying they think this is the direction that Sita's gone. And he identified that's where Sita is. And his wings came back and he flew away. That's not the end of the story by any means. So now the Vanaras had this conviction. They should confirm and they should advise Sita, Ram is coming soon. So don't bring harm to yourself. Take courage. Those two messages. Now how to deliver that message? Because they heard from Sampati that the place where Sita was 800 miles away. And so different Vanaras were being asked by Angada, how far can you jump, how far can you jump? And no one could jump the distance. Jambavan, fortunately, knew the history of Hanuman having powers that are extraordinary powers. So he reminded Hanuman of his powers. And so his remembrance of his powers came back because that was the curse. And as soon as his memory came back, his body started getting bigger and became really, really big, huge, ready to make the jump across the ocean to Lanka. And that ends Kishkinda section, and it begins the Sundarakanda section. Now there's a whole complete kanda, like canto, dedicated just to Hanuman. He's like so special in Ramayana. According to Govindaraj, this is a nice painting of the most celebrated commentator of Ramayana amongst the Sri Vaishnavas, named Govindaraja. And he has written, just like we have an understanding that the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam are like the body of Krishna. The first two cantos, his two lotus feet, etc., etc. So he explained in a similar way, Balakanda, Ayodhya-kanda, Aranya-kanda, Kishkinda-kanda, Kishkindya-kanda, and then this Sundara-kanda. That's what we're going to hear, the beginning part. Just the beginning part of Sundara-kanda. Sundara means beautiful, like Shama Sundara, or Gora Sundara. So Sundara-kanda, Uttara-kanda, and finally Uttara-kanda. So Hanuman's getting ready. His body's getting bigger. He's standing on top of Mahendra mountain. Specifically, this is where he's offering his prayers to Surya Dev, his guru, and to Vayu, his father, to have the strength to do this mission impossible, and offering prayers, getting ready, and your mark it set, go. So Hanuman, this is now one of the lessons. Hanuman expanded his body to gigantic proportions. This is, the poetry of Valmiki Ramayana. While grabbing onto the mountain with his hands and feet, he inadvertently crushed many deer underfoot. Pausing for several moments, Hanuman concentrated, composing his mind in preparation for the great leap. Because of the weight of his huge body, the entire mountain began to shake. Thus large snakes, while vomiting fire from their mouths, bit into the rocks, causing them to split into thousands of flaming fragments. Make a great movie, right? The Vidyadharas flew up in the sky to witness this spectacular jump. Thereafter, Hanuman crouched down, summoning all his energy, and the mountain peak began to crumble as spurts of water gushed forth from the immense pressure. Gandharva couples that had been sporting in the heavenly region, along with numerous rishis that resided there, quickly fled the mountain out of fear. Hanuman then declared to the monkeys, "Either I shall bring back Sita, or I shall uproot the entire city of Lanka." Along with Ravana, he's got powers. He can not just talk, he can do. So there's a very celebrated verse. Some of you that like chanting japa, this is a good verse to remember when you chant japa. Hanuman raised his head and neck, intending to cross the formidable ocean which none else could accomplish, looked like a leading bull. That's verse 2 of this section. And a little bit later, just like an arrow released by Raghava would fly, I too will proceed with the speed of the wind to reach Lanka, ruled by Ravana. That's a nice way to begin your japa. Meditate on Hanuman preparing himself to cross to Lanka. He drew in his breath, tensed his muscles. All of a sudden, he sprang into the air like an arrow shot from the bow of Ram. So there's a nice painting. Zoom, off he goes from atop Mahendra mountain, heading for Lanka. More poetry from Ramayana. Due to the force of Hanuman's jump, all the trees on the peak of Mount Mahendra were uprooted and thrown into the sky. In reply to their exclamation of wonder, Hanuman soared like a huge cloud and stretched out his tail. As Hanuman sailed through the heavens, the uprooted trees followed in his wake and then plummeted into the ocean. Simultaneously, various colored flowers that were blown from their branches fluttered down and scattered all over the surface of the water, creating a particularly beautiful sight. The imagery is why, because it's really so nicely described. So there he is with his tail outstretched. Looks like he's going for a swim, but here's a better one. There's his tail outstretched, crossing the ocean. Many nice paintings like this. He's got a big long tail, this one. And they're all roaring, "Yay, be victorious, Hanuman." And as he's crossing the ocean, he's going to meet obstacles even while crossing the ocean before getting to the other side. And the first obstacle is Mainaka Mountain. Mainaka Mountain. So we're going to hear something about Mainaka Mountain, and just to prepare yourselves. This is an obstacle that may come from the fruits of piety, and one may become complacent in the course of one's service if one becomes indulgent in the fruits of piety. And in this case, it wasn't even his piety. It was Vayu's piety, and it was Ramchandra's ancestors' piety, Sagara. So listen carefully. Mainaka emerged from the sea with a great roar. Sea, water falling with a crash on all sides. The golden peaked mountain rose swiftly, shining beautifully like many suns, with nagas and kinnaras sporting on its slopes. So the painting is showing the golden tip of the mountain. It just rose out of the sea. And the reason Mainaka rose from the sea was he was requested to assist Hanuman in his journey across to Lanka. A verse from Ramayana, it's a good verse to remember. Kritecha prati kartavyam esha dharma sanatana. Esha dharma sanatana. One should acknowledge a favor and try to pay it back. This is Sanatana Dharma. It's a verse right from Ramayana. It's a nice lesson. So what's the paying back? You receive a favor. Sanatana Dharma is you acknowledge it, and at least you make some kind of effort to reciprocate with that kindness that's been extended to you. That's Dharma. A Dharmic person lives like that. Commentary is that Mainaka had this particular, he shared this message to Hanuman knowing Hanuman is dharmic. So he expressed he wanted to fulfill a dharmic requirement of him. And here's how it happened. The god of the sea, Samudra, approached Mainaka and said, long, long ago, Sagra, King Sagra, one of the kings in the Surya dynasty, he did this wonderful service for me because Agastya Rishi was drying up the whole ocean, and Sagra came and expanded the area of the ocean. And so Sagra King is defying Agastya Rishi, and he saved me. So I received this favor from an ancestor of Ram, Sagara, and I want to give back. And one of the ways I can give back is you can help me. Similar idea. This is principle 1 of 2. Here's a nice verse from Shanti Parva of Mahabharata. In Shanti Parva in Mahabharata, Lakshmana, the story of Ram, because the story of Ramachandra happened before Mahabharata happened. And so in Mahabharata, there's passages from Ramayana or in relation to Ram's Leela within Mahabharata. Yes? Yes. So in this passage in Shanti Parva, Lakshmana is quoting Lord Brahma. And Lakshmana was angry at Sugriva because he was being negligent in his duty to Ram. Atonements have been prescribed for one who kills a brahmana, one who drinks liquor, and one who commits theft, and one who violates a sacred vow, but not one who is ungrateful. He's gesturing at Sugriva, saying, you're ungrateful. You've been helped. You're not reciprocating in any way. You made a vow that you would on top of it. So, krita gay. There's acknowledging is good. Not acknowledging is the opposite, not good. Nasti nishkriti. One who is ungrateful. Atonements are not possible for that person. It's so bad. There's a very nice story, which I'm not going to go into because of time, but there's a story of an ungrateful man in the Pancha Tantra. You know what Pancha Tantra is? Any of you 5 boys? I'm picking on you. I told you, I warned you. Pancha Tantra is a story about animals, and then the animals teach lessons. And there's a lesson, I'm not going to go into it because of time, but there's an ungrateful man. I didn't read the book, but I learned this from Urmila, because Urmila was a school teacher. She's still a teacher, but she was teaching children in a school. And she would teach the lessons to the children in school through Panchatattva. One of the stories in Panchatattva is an ungrateful man who suffered greatly because of this lack of gratitude. It's a long story. Interesting story. But it's a principle I want to emphasize. The principle that's being illustrated in this verse is Mainaka wanted to extend some gratitude, in his case, to Vayu. Why? Because Vayu saved Mainaka from Indra. What was the story? during a previous yuga, mountains had wings. Did you know that? Such a yuga. Mountains had wings. They could fly. And it created a problem because when they would fly, they'd come in for a landing. When they came in for a landing, they would squish the living entities that were underneath them. The explanation that's given is just like elephants, when they walk, they squish stuff underneath their big feet. They don't mean to hurt, whatever's underneath their feet. But they're living entities. They're being hurt. And so those who are being hurt, went to Indra saying, help, we're being squished by these flying mountains. Indra said, no problem, I'll help. I got a big thunderbolt weapon. I'll just cut off their wings with my thunderbolt weapon. But when it came to Mainaka, Vayu knew Indra's on his way to get Mainaka. So with his power of wind, he blew the whole mountain into the sea. So he could not be harmed by the thunderbolt of Indra. So as Mainaka was saved, that's why Samudra went to Mainaka. I want to reciprocate with the kindness. This is mode of goodness. But it can create an obstacle. In this case, the obstacle was they both wanted Hanuman. You have a long journey and a big thing to do ahead. Come and take some rest. We have some nice refreshments and relax and chill out. It was no thanks. But how do you say no thanks when somebody offers you some kindness in reciprocation for something? In this case, it wasn't even Hanuman. It was his father, and it was the ancestor of Ram who was in the service of. But some reciprocation for their kindness is coming to him. But he's got a mission. So what to do? You don't just dismiss the other person. That's not what a cultured person does. And Hanuman's a very cultured person. So the mountain deity stood on top of Mainaka and requested Hanuman to rest and take some refreshments. While gracefully receiving another's expression of gratitude, this is the lesson, overly indulging oneself in these gestures causes impediments. You can become complacent. So he said to him, I made a vow to Ram and Sugriva. I must finish my task before the day ends when it becomes night in Lanka. And night means Rakshasas become even more powerful. So I'm sorry, but I can't stop. So what did he do? He maintained his etiquette. He just came and touched the head of the personality that was representing the Mainaka mountain. And without feeling it either indulgent or entitled. So when we're doing service, this is a lesson, sometimes some kindness will come to you. And we don't want to dismiss it and say, no, 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 no. You don't want to say yes, 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 yes either. But because you got some important service to do. So complacency withers enthusiasm. It can cause distraction. One can become proud and indulgent in material opulences. Makes us lazy. So instead, you can indicate in the proper way, appropriate for the circumstance, thanks for your offer, but I have some very important service to do. So he just touched the top of the mountain. The mountain accepted that gesture that he was extending in kindness. This is continuing on with your service. Here's a very nice example, same thing from Brihat Bhagavatamrita. In Brihat Bhagavatamrita Part 2, there's Gopakumar, young cowherd boy, Gopa, who receives mantra from his guru. And once he received mantra from his guru told him what the benefits are that the mantra can give. And so he took it very seriously. We also hear what benefits our mantra can give. And sometimes we don't take it as seriously as we could or should. So when Gopakumar reached the higher realm, Tapaloka, the residents of Tapaloka were encouraging him, why go to all this trouble? Just sit here and meditate, and you can see the personality of Godhead. So, wanting to avoid being ungrateful, Gopakumar never stopped chanting. He might justify abandoning the mantra only after attaining its final goal. If he were to stop chanting before then, he would not discover the mantra's full benefits. Check it out. If he didn't personally experience what the mantra can give him, then how could he be properly situated? Because the mantra is given for a reason. Thus, to stop the chanting prematurely would amount to ingratitude, for without having bothered to receive all the mantra's benefits, how could he properly acknowledge them? Good lesson, right? Good lesson. Okay, so that was obstacle number 1. And there's 3 more. That was mode of goodness, the fruits of piety. And according to commentary, this displayed his character. Next came his competence, because the demigods considered when he gets to Lanka, he's going to have a big difficulty. So let's help him and let's examine his competence. And so Indra approached Surasa, the mother of the Nagas. That's what the painting is meant to show. That's mother of the Nagas is down below. Surasa rose from the sea and opened her mouth wide to swallow Hanuman. So what's Hanuman going to do? Hanuman made his body bigger and bigger and bigger. And as he made his body bigger and bigger, her mouth became bigger and bigger. Always bigger than he became bigger. And she let him know, I'm going to skip some of this. Yes. Brahma has granted me a boon that none who come before me can escape being eaten. So he doesn't want to violate Brahma's boon. So he came bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And 8 miles. Remember, he's going to jump 800 miles. But 8 miles, that's big. And 20 miles. And whenever he expanded, she expanded. And then all of a sudden, he made his body really small. So he entered her mouth, and as you see in the painting, he came out her ear. Pretty clever, huh? And 100 yojanas, that's the same distance that he had to travel to get to Lanka. That's 800 miles. He came really small and came out her ear. And he said, I've honored Brahma's boon. They'll let me pass and fulfill my mission. I wish you will. His competence was being challenged or tested, examined. So sometimes we have challenges. We have to stretch a little bit. Maybe we can't make our body really big, but whatever the circumstances, according to our capacity, you summon the gifts that Krishna has given you, and you exercise them to your capacity. And he wasn't in a competitive mood towards Shurasa, but he was just doing that which is practical. And he remained very humble and very intelligent. So, an obstacle of passion. And she was very pleased. The demigods were very pleased. This shows he entered in her mouth and came out her ear. And then the Naga goddess assumed her original form and praised Hanuman, blessing him to be successful in his quest. This is from this Aranyakanda. Hanuman, had heard about Shurasa. The Naga goddess Shurasa in Valmiki Ramayana is one of the 10 daughters born of Kashyapa Muni by his wife Krodavasha, one of Daksha's 13 daughters given in marriage to Kashyapa Muni. So she praised him for his prowess. And I'm going to skip it a little bit, skip forward. There's verses from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, chapter 3, chapter 15. Then we are also given these instructions in Bhagavad Gita, and then the Leela of Hanuman dealing with Shurasa also tells us how to stay very, very focused. Now, here's a nice question. When, supposing, for example, you know the story, Rupa Goswami was challenged by a scholar, let's debate. Man was really proud, and Rupa Goswami said, "Oh, you're such a scholar, there's no competition. I accept defeat." Very good. Put it in writing. So he put it in writing. He's not interested in engaging in competition with a person like that. That's not our business as Vaishnavas to defeat people. There are times when we engage in lively discussion. And there are times when we just walk away from that. There's a very well-known statement from a Lutheran theologian. Here's his name, Reinhold Niebuhr. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. After one time I was presenting this in a public forum, and somebody came up afterwards and told me, this particular statement is what addicts are taught. It's an AAA, Alcoholics Anonymous statement that they help people that are addicted to alcohol to take the grace of God, to have the courage to do the right thing and know the difference between what you can't change and what you can change. It's nice. It's a nice statement. Okay, so that's lesson number 2. An obstacle of passion. In this case, explicitly arranged by the demigods, and he passed the test. He had competence, and he did a wise thing, while not disrespecting her or competing with her or anything like that. And then comes obstacle number 3, Simhika. This tells where the section is. It's a long section. Simhika had a particular power, as illustrated here. She could control the movements of others by their shadow. Because Hanuman was traveling very, very high in the sky. And although he was traveling high in the sky, there was a shadow cast upon the ocean, and Simhika was able to control his movement by controlling the shadow. And so as he was zooming along, all of a sudden it wasn't zooming anymore. And he was wondering what happened. And then he looked down and he saw Simhika. He was traveling so high, he was in the pathway of the Siddhas and Charnas, according to Ramayana. Now, you 5 boys, where do the Siddhas and Charnas reside? Where do they hang out? Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, and Swargaloka. They're in the in-between the earthly realm and the heavenly realm. Siddhas and Charnas. He was way up there. Yep, better than the 747s. He was way up there. And still she could capture his shadow. According to Kishkinda Kanda, that's back in an earlier Kanda, Hanuman, heard about this lady. She was known by a different name, Angarika, a very famous wicked personality. Beware of Angarika. It's right in Kishkinda Kanda. Informed to Hanuman by Sugriva. Now he's having his encounter with her, and as he's moving along, not only his forward movements was interrupted, but he was falling down and down and down and down and down, and her big mouth was wide open, ready to swallow him. But her mood is not that of Shurasa. Her mood is lethal. So he did it again, enlarging his body. He made his body as hard as a diamond, and then he all of a sudden became very small. He entered into her mouth and began to tear apart her vital parts. He cleft her heart in two and burst out from her chest. Simika fell crashing back into the sea. End of Simika. So sometimes there are obstacles you don't mess with. He didn't have any discussion with her. He understood the obstacle and the nature that she represented. When she was killed, the sages and devas showered flowers. Hanuman was created by Lord Brahma for the purpose of killing terrible Simhika. So this is a little bit, not too much. Simhika was the representation of the acts that are prohibited by bhakti, or vikarma. And chief amongst a driving force behind vikarma is envy ultimately of Krishna, and then envy of those representing Krishna. She had this capacity of controlling people by controlling their shadow. Similarly, envious people often move around trying to be unknown by others. I forget where I was, not so long ago. I was watching a cat chasing some birds, and the cat made her body almost flat on the ground. And her little paws were moving. And then the birds saw the cat coming, they flew in the air. Envious people have their mischievous ways of doing things. Obstacles placed by the mode of ignorance. Don't mess around with mode of ignorance obstacles. Deal with them strongly, directly. Okay. And don't forget Krishna. So here's obstacle 3 lesson. When the doorway of opportunity to fulfill our service mission suddenly closes tightly, what are we to do? Hanuman's response: remain determined, supported by a strong conviction that the mission must be somehow fulfilled. Abiding by that faith, wait another door to open that we did not see before, and proceed with a grateful heart to do the needful for the completion of our mission. Mode of ignorance obstacles. And last but not least, number 4, there she is. Lankini, the protectress of Lanka. So it was night. In the full moon night, Lankini came out and checked Hanuman. And when she checked him, she said, "Get out of here," and she slapped him. Now, she's got a weapon in her hand. She could have done more than slap him. She struck him with her hand. Hanuman didn't flinch. He clenched his fist and hit her, but without full force because she's a woman. This is from Valmiki Ramayana. And when he struck her, she fell on the ground, hard enough that her activity was checked. And as soon as that happened, she begged Hanuman to spare her life. Then she remembered something that she heard from Lord Brahma. What she heard from Lord Brahma was, one day a monkey will come, enter Lanka, and this is a sign that the end of the Rakshasa dynasty has arrived. And she knew. Now, she was very loyal to Ravana, so she wanted to be spared, but Hanuman let her go. She let him go, and she immediately went into the city to inform Ravana what happened. And we're almost done. She, according to commentaries, she represents false ego, or the bodily conception of life. She made certain statements when she spoke to him. Here's one of them. She didn't exactly say, I am this body. She manifested her form as soon as she saw Krishna. And I alone protect this entire city. She's the doer in the bodily conception. In obedience to the orders of the great demon king Ravana, I am protecting this unassailable city. These are messages of false ego. Now Hanuman knew what to do. And here comes a saintly person. She didn't want to recognize him as a saintly person. She was ready to do something else. And become suspicious about the intention of the same as what Sugriva was thinking about Vibhishan when he came. So, there are obstacles in life. And there's the internal one, the false ego one, that's the biggest one. So that's about it. I'm going to just move quickly. Here's another nice, same photograph of Hanuman. Now, I added some nice paintings that are from, there's a Hanuman temple just out in the suburbs of Dallas. Has anyone here been there? You've been there. Nice place. Somehow I cut and pasted. Somebody sent me all the photos from that place. And I inserted them into this presentation and they didn't save. I don't know what happened. So I can't show you those images because they didn't get saved. But there's two nice photos of deities in that place. And it's just, it's the same message, just more illustrations of the same message. So back to the main premise, and we're going to end. The main premise is the itihasas and Puranas. They're meant to not just embellish, but illustrate. This is what it looks like. Here's a teaching in these Shrutis. Here's what it looked like in real life. But it's not just fiction, it's real life. It's histories. And within those histories, the principles are embedded. And life has its obstacles. So how do we learn lessons from Ramayana or from the Shrutis? And one of the benefits of hearing Scripture, especially hear it again and hear it again and hear it again, the lesson, it brings purification of heart, and then it gives principles to live your life by. Specifically, especially, Ramayana is a treatise about excellent character, virtue, Maryada Purushottama, Ramchandra, who lives a life of perfect harmony with the principles of Dharma. And he never deviates from the principles of Dharma, although there are topics we won't cover this evening where people question, wait a minute, what about this and that? That's another evening. We're going to speak about his banishing Sita and was that dharmic or not. So it's good to hear, although Ram Navami is over, to hear again and hear again and hear again and hear again and hear again. One of the reasons for character of Kali Yuga diminishing is people hear less. And what fills that space when they hear less? They get really busy with fruitive work. So busy with fruitive work, there's no time. It's true. Prabhupada writes it in Ishopanishad. Materialistic people will tell us, I don't have time. And it's true, because the material energy is engaging them so vigorously, they don't have time. But it's because they're engaging themselves in fruitive activity so vigorously, they don't have time. Is it possible to dial it down a little bit and dial up a little bit the hearing and chanting activities and do it regularly and become a virtuous person with a heart that's pure so you don't have pride? Is it possible? Continue to do well in school and become pure in heart by the process of hearing and chanting and having nice examples from scripture and in the community of people you can look up to and follow their nice example. Because you guys, you're the future. Yes or no? So now is the time to learn the future. Become virtuous and of good character and be successful. You can't be as good as Hanuman, but you can be successful. He had a really good teacher, the sun god. Can't get any better than that. Okay. Discussion.
The fourth obstacle with avoiding saintly association and false ego, is that also mode of passion?
Well, it's certainly passion, but it's driven by false ego. It's explicitly driven by false ego. I mean, yes, there's all kinds of overlap, but there's the particular feature that's being illustrated at the same time. Yes.
My question is, Maharaj, you mentioned that result of piety is that we get great intelligence or beauty or opulence. But then it seems like it's counterproductive, because then you develop false ego.
No, you don't have to. Okay. Don't be smarter than Krishna. People that are pious should be awarded. And then there's choices to make once the award comes. Be properly guided and you don't become indulgent. Be properly guided and you can be, really good in school and really successful in what you do and not proud. How do you do that? Make the heart pure. How do you do that? Bhakti. Chaita Darpana Marjanam. Starting with chanting. Supposing somebody doesn't have all that, then they're going to be proud. There's a few proud people in this world I've seen. And they do prideful things. They can hurt other people and not blink. Some people hurt other people, they feel bad about it, but they go on hurting people. Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. Maharaj, one more question.
Yeah.
How does one become devotee? Is it result of past pious activities, or is it mercy of other devotees?
This is a nice question.
Yeah.
Read Madhurya Kandamani, because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur goes through 8 different. Some people say this, no. Some people say that, no. Some people say the other thing, no. Some people say the other thing, no. And then the answer is, bhakti is received from one who's carrying bhakti.
Yes.
That's how it begins. It begins because, in one sense, because it's already there, but just forgotten. But it'll stay forgotten until one comes in contact with one who's carrying bhakti. So, we are little people. And we have a role to play as little people. Give bhakti according to your capacity. Just like in school, or like in the workplace, or in the community that we live in, and give bhakti. Be by example and give to others. Perambulatory bhakti distributors. And you're protected. And you can do nice service to others.
Thank you.
Yay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. My question was, how do you it was just in general, how do you deal with aggression and frustration and anger and things like that?
How do you deal with negative emotions? You listed a few of them, and there's a much longer list. Well, from Bhagavad Gita, one of the first things is tolerate. But how do you tolerate when this thing is pushing on you? And the answer is purity, or at least moving towards purity, where you have some genuine shelter. If you have a higher purpose to live for, to reach towards, you continue with that. It's one of the ways to deal with negative emotions, is have a purpose and mission in life that's reasonably well defined. The more well defined it is, the better. And then you just continue moving in that direction, even when this negative thing comes your way. You acknowledge it. Don't deny it. It's there, but it's not you. That's another important one. If it's not you, then what is it? It's a covering that's circumstantial. That circumstance comes and circumstance goes. Another circumstance comes and another circumstance goes. Another emotion will come, and another period of time, and it'll pass. So stay fixed in Sat, who you really are, the soul within. And the soul doesn't become distressed or anxious or angry, or that's the mind. And so these are little tips, but ultimately it's having a real shelter. As the heart becomes purified in your life, in my life, as the heart becomes purified, then the distractions, they just become less significant. They're still there. When you stub your toe, you can still feel it. It hurts. Or when somebody, verbally assaults you, you know what's going on, but you don't identify with it. It's because you have shelter. If you don't have shelter, you get pushed around by the waves of the river, this way, that way, the other way. Shelter. You had something.
So Maharaj, who was Hanuman in his past life?
Who was Hanuman in his past life? That's a nice question. I thought Hanuman is eternal. Oh. He's an eternal associate. Hanuman is the eternal associate of Lord Ramachandra. So it's not, there may be a better answer than that one, but my immediate thought goes to he's just Hanuman. So he manifests by an arrangement by Vishnu, and Vayu became the father, and he manifested as Hanuman, but he's an eternal associate of Lord Ramachandra. Does anybody have a different answer than that one? Who was Hanuman in his previous life? Same. Oh, which Purana is that from? It's not Valmiki Ramayana. It's not Valmiki Ramayana. There are, just a detail. According to Padma Purana, there are 100 different versions of Ramayana. Valmiki is the gold standard, and there's many, many, many others. I came across that statement, but it's not. I can't remember which one of the Ramayanas, but it's over there in the corner. It's not central to who is Hanuman in his previous life. So that's not a wrong answer, but it's not the primary answer. Okay. Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So yesterday you explained like how a bhakta, when he actually insults Vaishnavas or Guru, falls down, right?
Well, you get an artha in the heart. Something unwanted in the heart arises. Now that can be one way of saying that's a fall down from the standard of Shuddha Bhakti, but most of us are not in Shuddha Bhakti platform anyways. What a more specific consequence is something in the heart appears, something unwanted. You can call it a fall down, but something unwanted in the heart appears.
So my question is like last time it was Dvivida Vanar who did different mischief
Yes,
things.
correct.
But here also Hanuman during his childhood did a lot of things like he pulled beard up and all. So how to understand
He's a
that?
little child. He has a license.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So yesterday narrated when Lakshmana got fever and Dvida helped him coming out of that fever.
Yeah.
Then he was asking favor, okay, kill me now only. But still Lakshmana denied that, okay, later. But in that pain, he killed so many innocent people.
Who he did?
Dvida. So, I mean, what was the fault of those innocent people, and what was their destinations after killing?
Well, several things. One is that reference came from an Upa Purana that's not one of the principal Puranas. I included it because I found it interesting, and it is from an Upa Purana. But I've never heard our acharyas refer to it as, a major event that we should pay attention to. But I mentioned it anyways. That's a part one. Now, someone that has the potential of doing more harm, that potential of doing more harm is there with anyone. That is to say, we have free will, which is intrinsic to the soul, and free will means we can properly or misuse that free will. So now, taking that little sound bite of information, why let living entities exist? Because they have the potential of misusing their free will. You can't put living entities out of existence because they're eternal. So then it's the fault of the Creator because he gave them free will to begin with. And then it just goes around. It's not the fault of the Creator. There's tiny freedom, but very limited. So if kindness is shown to somebody who has the potential of doing harm, is that a mistake? If kindness is shown to someone who has the potential of doing harm, is that a mistake? Because look, that person, in fact, they misused their free will and they did bad stuff. So for doing bad stuff, there's consequences. I'm going to hear something in the past 3 days I've been dealing with. There's a devotee in a certain place in China that has had dialysis and very severe kidney problem for several years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and it wasn't curing. Those who were treating him recommended kidney surgery replacement. And the rule in this hospital that he went to, it's a celebrated place. They have 100% success rate, and they don't allow the patients to even be seen while they're in the ICU. And they control their diet completely. And they told him ahead of time, we'll be serving you meat because protein. You need very strong protein. Your body's going to be weak. And so he surrendered. And then I was being asked what to do. I mean, it's not right on target with your question, but it's related. Because supposing I say no, supposing I say yes, there's consequences with saying no or yes. So they made a decision. So I said, this is my advice, but you're going to have to decide because you got this specialty hospital. You're all lined up, and anyway. It's a very real life dilemma. How you get it? What to do? He's been suffering for several years with it, and they've got a place, and they're going to take care of him. So he made his decision. I was saying, look, I wouldn't recommend this. Here's what I did. I contacted whatever his title is, the person in charge of the Bhaktivedanta Hospital, Dwarkadish Prabhu, Dr. something, and asked him, can you put something in writing or make a recording, someone can transcribe it, that can say, here's some options other than that to get the protein. And he did it. So I sent that to them, and they made their decisions. They're misusing their free will. There's consequences. But I'm not going to tell them, don't go to the hospital that has 100% success rate because they've already signed up. They kind of mentally bought into what they said. Anyway, that's an application point of your question. Then the hospital is asking them, would you be willing to be an organ donor? Now, where's the Shastra Praman for that one? It's a new thing. And I replied, after some thought, I asked Dr. Dwarkadish, do you have anything else to add? That which is not done for the pleasure of Krishna has karma. Where's the pleasure of Krishna in all of this? Charity, okay. Where's the pleasure of Krishna in all of this? For your wife to donate her kidney, that's okay because you're a Vaishnava. You're going to use her kidney to serving Krishna, so that's not wrong on her part. But what do? You open a hospital. What's that? No, it's the Bhaktivedanta hospital is different than just opening a. Anyway, there are decisions in life that have consequences. You can't control somebody's free will. So back to the Upapurana reference. Please take my life. No. Next. Because there was some, in a higher sense, there was some purpose for him. There was a Ramchandra intended purpose for Dvidvida and Minda, specifically Dvidvida, to teach the world the lesson. What happens when you make a fence? And it was to be finished by Balaram. Anyway, that's a transcendental explanation. Someone else. I see several hands. And it's already 8:32. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj. And, since yesterday and somewhat today, we have discussed about a Vaishnava Aparadh
Yes.
and talked about the sensitivity of how sensitivities,
Yes.
to be careful with that.
Yes.
In many sense, like, one side for us to be careful where we knowingly commit a Vaishnava Aparadh,
Yeah.
that is little bit more manageable. But we hear in the sense of like Rupa Goswami, even in his meditation of Radha and Krishna's pastime, when it was not his intention, but somebody who mistook it to be a aparadh, even that works as a aparadh. Now, if we need to be completely free from Vaishnava aparadh in order to have Krishna or, ultimately attain the supreme goal of life, then it might be almost next to impossible.
No. Krishna will protect you. You know the verses in Bhagavad Gita. Apicheto daracharo and the next verse. Shipram bhavati dharmatma. Krishna is our protector. Inadvertent is Krishna is going to protect us. So the measure is our intention. And if your intention is true, then you don't deviate. But supposing circumstance, there's a deviation, Krishna will correct it. I consider there's sadhu, and if there is some, I'll correct. The Krishna factor is our protection. So it's not impossible. Thanks to Krishna. There's someone else with their hand up in the back. Here comes the microphone, because apparently there's some people remote.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the class, Maharaj. While you were giving this example, something came to my mind.
Which example?
About the hospital.
The hospital, okay.
Yeah, so when Srila Prabhupada was like roughly 5 years old, if I'm correct, he had fallen ill, and his father, Srila Gaur Mohan Das, had basically, the doctor had said, he has to take a non-veg soup. And he said, Gaur Mohan Das was a Vaishnava. He said, no, my son will not have it. But he said, if the doctor said, I would make it, you don't have to make it. I'll bring it for you. And you just, give it to Prabhupada. And he brought it. He said, if that's what is going to save his life, then okay. That's what Gaur Mohan Das said. And then when the doctor brought and offered it to Srila Prabhupada, he vomited. So he was very happy. Then his father was happy that Prabhupada didn't accept it. And he said, okay, now the decision is done. He's not going to take it. And Prabhupada recovered without having that. So that was just, giving me confidence on the example you gave, that it was Krishna's will that a Vaishnava can recover. It doesn't have to be dependent on, something like that.
Interesting story.
Yeah.
I don't recall having heard that one.
It was in Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit.
I can't. I'm sure I read it, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, just
okay.
find it.
Someone else. Are we done? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki Gaur Premanandi. Nice space for a Friday night. There's a lot of devotees here. And very kindly,